All right, my friends, welcome back to the Reisinger build. We've made some incredible progress over here. On this specific episode, we're gonna be diving into the electrical. We got some really cool stuff going on. And I've got a special surprise guest. CJ, our electrician that shoots videos on the Build Show Network, is in from California to give us a tour. Hey, look who just showed up too. I got Tim and Chelsea from my office. We're gonna be going over some real specific details on what we've done for electrical. Now, there's two things I want to point out as we get going on this episode. We're trying to build this house on a more modest budget, but we're also trying to build both a high performance house and a house that's as future-proof as possible. So stay tuned specifically on this episode for those two things. The Reisinger build in partnership with our friends at Builders First Source Electrical. Let's get going.
A Build Original Series in partnership with Builders First Source. The Reisinger Build.
All right, let's go see if we can find CJ and Rick. There they are. What's up, boys? Good morning,
Nice
CJ.
to see you, man.
Rick, how are you?
Morning. How are you?
So if you don't know these guys, let me introduce you. Rick Power has been doing my electrical work for over a decade now, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing electrician here in Austin. CJ is a master electrician in California who's shooting videos for us on Build Show Network, who came in today to give us a little bit of an electrician's perspective on your work, Rick, with a fresh set of eyes and also a different perspective from California to Texas. So where do we start, guys? We got a lot to talk about today. What's the best place to start this episode, do you think? What do you think,
I mean,
CJ?
the first thing I noticed when I walked in was that span panel in the garage. I mean, it's beautiful. So maybe we start there.
Why don't we talk about that? So let's start at the service. We'll meet you guys in the garage. All right, boys, come on out to the garage. We got to close the door behind us.
Man, it is way cooler in there. I'm still not used to this Texas heat.
So you guys don't do temporary air conditioning on your job sites?
Oh, that's what's running out front?
Yeah, we got a 5-ton heat pump that Rick sets up our T-pole ahead of time with enough juice to be able to power that thing.
I mean, we got a little mild climate in California, but that's spoiled, man.
It's pretty nice.
But it's the Texas heat. I get it.
You know, it's going to be 103 today in Texas. The house will stay, you know, around 80, let's say.
All right.
So certainly Rick and his guys are going to get a much better work day when they're not sweating their tail off by 9 a.m. But the other big thing for us is we'll let that run through the finish stage. So now my hardwood floors, my caulking, all of my woodwork in the house stays at the same humidity and temperature that the house is going to be. So that temporary AC we really think of as a homeowner benefit to make sure that they don't have a bunch of cracking and caulking and moving of materials after they move into the house.
So you're pretty airtight right now. You initiated that after you got your windows, doors, and your zip.
Yeah, the full envelope's intact, and I had one of my carpenters make us a temporary door to the outside. And we ran a temporary blower door test. I'll tell you about that later, but we were real tight on this house.
Oh, dude, that's next level. And again, just the climate in there, comfy for work, and I'm going to work faster if it's cool in there.
I know, it's pretty nice. All right, so 411 on span. You know, I think of span as an expensive upgrade, but we're trying to build this house on a more modest budget. How does this fit in on this project?
I mean, I was nerding out with Rick earlier, and I mean, he knows the ins and outs of the Texas power, but you're going span main too?
Yes, sir.
How big's the main out here?
200 amp.
So, I mean, right there. I mean, I haven't done load calcs, but I walked the house. It's, I don't know, how many square feet?
We're like 3,200 square feet of living. I've got a pretty big garage here. So under roof, this house is probably over 4,000 square feet under roof.
All electric?
100% electric. I've got a propane generator going in eventually, a Champion generator, but that's it.
Okay, so I mean, I didn't run the numbers, but you think, I mean, it's tipping point. Okay, so max size servers, we'd have to probably upgrade at that point.
Yes.
So I think that's my number one talking point on span is it's really nice. The obvious one is that you could use a smaller service coming in instead of spending all this money to upgrade the service. I mean, what do you got cost-wise for Texas power? I know California's spendy to get a service upgrade from 200 to 320 or 400.
Good point. What are we typically spending, Rick?
$10,000-$12,000.
And that's just for the engineering to get it done, right? Plus the transformer and all the work the city's going to do.
Including transformers.
Okay, all right, that includes it.
And that's a big chunk of change.
That's a lot of money.
I mean,
10,
I think
12,000
too, it's always this mystery number for us at the beginning of a project. If we need to upgrade, I won't necessarily know, and I think it's the same thing here. what that mystery number is going to be for the power company to upgrade our power. So span right there, we can use a smaller service. It's cool that we're able to do that.
Makes sense. Okay, so for someone who doesn't know what this particular panel is, it looks pretty, yes, but there's a lot of brains that go in here. CJ or Rick, can you explain the difference between this and a standard, square D panel that we've been using for 40 years?
Well, it's being load management. It allows you to have a bigger service, or the small service, which would require a bigger service.
So they're smart. I mean, this thing's got a computer in it.
Yes.
You've installed quite a few of these, right?
Yeah,
so they got a computer in it, and it'll monitor every single load. You can go on your phone. You can dial in things that you want to turn off when another turns on. So there's logic built into it. Okay. But not only that, it's the ability to turn things off. You can see what you're using again, and it'll regulate that load based off of what service size you have, and your air conditioner turns on, and you got the double oven rocking, and you got the pool pumps going. I mean, again, car charging. It will actually turn on and off loads to keep you within that threshold and not be throwing main breakers or overloading transformers. So
funny you mentioned car chargers. We actually have 2 of them on this project.
Oh, you got the span drive.
Yeah, we're in the city of Austin. A lot of my customers have 2 electric cars or are thinking they're going to have 2 in the very near future.
Yes.
So on this project, we said, look, let's go ahead and install them because we think that they're going to be wanted, needed. It's going to be the reason why we sell this house. So I've got 2 of these span drive modules. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but these actually direct connect, right, rather than having a plug that they plug into in the garage?
Correct.
So these will be on either side of the garage. And then when you said load management, the first thing I'm thinking of is load management for EV, because if these things are rocking, how many amps is this thing pulling, CJ?
I mean, typically we'll feed these things with 50 amps. So if it's not a smart charger, and you got a 50 amp charger on that side, 50 amp charger on that side, you and your wife come home, you both plug in, you got to go to work in the morning, there's 100 amps right there, give or take, depending on the car and everything else, but span interfaces directly with it. And again,
if my ACs are running, the pool pump's going or whatever, we don't have a pool here, but if we'd had those loads going, this panel's smart enough to go, hey, let's dial back these car chargers to 25 amps rather than 48 amps, so that I can make sure I can share that load.
Exactly. Think about it like a water valve. You're just closing it, and you're not letting so much go. So you can throttle back that power, which again, it's doing automatically. It's all in the logic, and the logic's pretty smart.
That's pretty neat. Talk to me about cost. Do you guys have any idea where these things come in? Or can you give us some basics on where these might come to on cost?
Well, when they first came out, they were originally $4,500 a piece.
Okay.
But they've came way down, and right now they're at about $3,400 a piece.
That's nice. And we do have a rebate here in City of Austin on these as well,
yes,
which brings down the cost another $700 or $800. I can't remember the exact rebate number. So now we're talking about a $2,500 panel maybe after rebates, compared to what we thought of as more like a $5,000 option years ago.
Yeah, so things have changed quite a bit. And again, sub panel has been out for a while, but you guys are doing a meter main out there too, the span meter main.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
What are you putting? I mean, I see a bunch of 20 amp circuits coming into here. What are you putting outside?
Everything is on the outside is the 220 circuits.
Oh, okay.
Everything inside is all the 110 stuff.
So there you go. So every single thing will be on the load management system, regardless if it's in the main or if it's in the sub panel, which is pretty awesome.
That's pretty awesome. A couple things I want to point out. We're in the garage here, and the garage will have some conditioning. I'm going to do a recessed carrier unit that's basically a mini split, but a recessed, nicer looking one. So this will be within the air conditioned envelope. The span main will be outside in the heat, but it's rated for that, right, Rick?
Correct.
And one thing that we did in talking to Rick to prepare that is we've got zip bar on this project, right? Insulation bonded to 1/2-inch zip on the outside. I wanted a little more meat, and we knew that we're going to have several things mounted on the outside of the house: the meter base, the span panel, probably something with the generator, transfer switch, that sort of thing. So what we did was we took 2 extra sheets of the brown zip, which is the 5/8 zip, bonded those together and screwed them onto the backside of the wall here, and then zip taped it all, so that now when Rick goes to install that on the outside, we're going to have a much better nail base, screw base for all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing I want to mention is this garage is outside of our air-conditioned envelope of the house. We want to really separate house from garage, and we talked about this in earlier episodes. But when we framed this house originally, we framed the whole house first, including this wall, which is the outside wall of the kitchen's right on the other side of me. And if you were to look into the attic, the other side of those walls is kids' bedrooms upstairs. That zip runs continuous, and then we bolted on the framing with some long structural screws from Simpson through that air barrier. So now Rick does something for me that's a little bit out of the ordinary, probably, right, Rick?
It is.
Not everybody does this. Where all these Romex wires you see that are the 120 yellow wires coming through, I had him drill one hole per wire coming through that air barrier. The reason being is now I can get up there and seal each one of those. I can use some liquid flash, Huber's fluid applied weather barrier. It's like a super caulking, for lack of a better term. And we can caulk around each one of those wires to make that both airtight, bug tight, vapor tight. We're making sure if there's fumes in the garage that none of that's getting into the house. So that's a little bit of a different detail, but Rick's starting to do that on a lot of my houses, and it doesn't necessarily affect you too much other than just knowing what to do ahead of time, right, Rick?
Yep.
I like it.
Drill bit cost goes up a little bit, right? You're probably burning through some drill bits. I think it's worth it.
We haven't cleaned up yet. We just drilled this literally like a day or so ago, or maybe this morning even. So yeah, we got a lot of sawdust on the floor to clean up. But other than that, it's looking great out here. Let's switch gears, guys, and go in the house and talk about some of the electrical in there.
Yeah, actually, I want to see some of this stuff. It's pretty awesome.
We'll meet you in the house. All right, boys, speaking of temp AC, let's do a little check here. It's 10:30 in the morning. It's 86 degrees, and I put a little job site thermometer out. It's 76 in the house.
Nice.
And it's supposed to get to 98 as the high today. Humidity's elevated, though, outside, so the feels like temperature high today is going to be 104. That's why we got some temp AC in the house.
I'm not used to this, guys.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. CJ, if you don't mind, I'm going to let you and Rick take over for a minute. I need to go check on the ERVs up in the attic. I want to see how those turned out.
Good deal.
So I'll let you guys
We're
finish
check
up.
these plans out.
I'll come
There's
back.
a couple things I noticed, too, I wanted to chat about. Cool.
Sounds good.
Hey, Rick, I noticed, like, walking in right away, the work's insanely clean, really nice. But there are a few things that had popped out to me. Is there any reason you're using this specific can?
We don't have to use the IC rated.
Okay.
Like, we put them in because that's what Matt uses.
Okay. So IC and Airtight,
Yes.
4-inch, so he kind of prefers the smaller aperture.
The smaller aperture.
Okay, cool. And that's actually awesome. Airtight, everything Build shows about Airtight.
Yes.
So you're using Airtight cans. And then I noticed a few other things on the wiring, the penetrations, and how you seal them up. That's pretty awesome. What about the plans, though? I mean, do they leave anything up to you guys as far as layout goes, or is this set in stone and you guys can just come and blow and go and wire this place?
No, I mean, the plans are drawn out for us, but I know I've worked with Matt a lot and I know what he likes. So we move things around. And
Yeah, I noticed you got a bunch of red lines, or what I'd call pencil marks everywhere.
Sure.
You guys walk this with the client, or whoever's in charge, and adjust things that you might see weird?
We do. We nail the house up by plan, and we do a blue box walk.
Okay.
After the blue boxes are up, we come in and walk the house, make any changes.
I like that, man.
Before we run wire.
That's such a big point to me, is because I think there's two things, right? Code minimum.
Yes.
And then there's, which a lot of architects will draw. They'll plot our receptacles on the walls and locations just to meet code, but then you walk in and layout doesn't really make sense if you have a 12-foot wall and a receptacle dead center. I know it meets code.
Right.
But, you have the bed cover. So they'll adjust everything.
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty awesome.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And then switching plan, right? This is just all standard switching. You guys are using dimmers. Okay.
Just standard dimmers.
How is
switches.
that with you guys? That's actually going to be a code change where almost everything is required to be on a dimmer, which I think clients prefer it already.
Sure.
You guys
Definitely.
have, and then vacancy sensors. Do you have any of those codes?
None of that yet.
So it's a little different in California. We have actually specific codes for energy where when you walk into the bathroom, one source of the lighting has to be on a vacancy sensor. So when you leave, it automatically turns off. which
Wow.
I think is a convenient thing. But again,
Sure.
it's driven by California energy codes. But I can see that. I feel like some of the states will start adopting it. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
So, all right, man, let's go check out the rest of the job. I want to see some other stuff.
Sure.
Cool.
Let's go.
Hey, Rick, I wanted to chat real quick. This is the garage, and this is the barrier between the garage and the main house. Yes. This is where all your home runs went through, that you had to drill one hole.
Yes.
I want Matt to explain it. Hey, Matt, can you come over and explain this stuff to us?
Yeah, CJ, what are you asking, brother?
So we were out in the garage. Yep. We already talked about the penetrations, and we talked about the air seal. I can completely comprehend that.
Yeah, we were right on the other side of that, and this is the wall separating the kitchen from the garage. So that's those one wire, one hole.
So we got a complete air seal. This wall breaks between the garage. Yep. Why? I mean, I'm pretty sure you're conditioned in the garage too. Right. But can you explain like the concept between?
Yeah, so the whole idea is we really want to separate our house air from our garage air. Okay. Our garage air is not going to be as good. You know, what if they store gas in the garage? What if someone idled their truck in the garage for 2 minutes to warm it on a cold day and then pulled out? Okay. All those fumes were left in there? We don't want any of that house air and garage air to mix. So even though it's conditioned out there, we don't want them mixing of the two. So that's going to really keep that tightness of air between the house and the garage. And then Rick's doing that elsewhere too. Like we talked about earlier today, specifically the Arlington inboxers we're using. Yeah. And we want to drill just one hole through the penetration of the outside, seal that hole nicely, and then put that box in. So it's really a kind of a philosophy, a mindset that we need all the tradespeople, the builders, the carpenters, everyone to be thinking about that. Green zip is the last line of defense. That's our air barrier. We want to do everything we can to protect.
Right, and so this isn't even a code, right? I mean, we're not required by it in California. So this is literally for a rising or build to have that air tightness. See, I think that's actually important that you're working with the right trades, because it's not just Rick that has to do it. It's plumber. It's any penetration is the same concept.
I mean, that's why we use the same trades over and over, CJ. I mean, that's why Rick's been in our jobs for 10 years. He works great. We love working with him. And then when we talk about this, you know, we started doing this 2-3 years ago when I built my house, was kind of the first one we did that way. Yep. Then we talk about it on every job. Hey, we're going to do that same air tightness detail. You want us to drill one per? And in some cases, we differ from that. Like Rick and I earlier today were saying, hey, where you penetrate from the garage to the outside service, do you want me to drill one hole and then we'll put a gutter outside like we did in my house? Well, we don't need to do that because we're in the garage. Yeah. And I'm not as worried about a little garage air leaking from the garage to the outside. Yeah. Now, we're still going to make it tight. I don't want bugs getting in there, but I don't mind Rick drilling a big, what do you normally do, 4-inch?
2-inch? 3 5/8.
Okay, so a 3-inch hole, and then he's going to put all his 220 wires through that one hole and then right into the back of the panel.
So, I mean, it's a mindset too, because it's changing I could see an old school guy coming in here and being like, what the heck? I don't want to do that. That's right. We'll just normally blow one hole out or sawzall a big old hole and run our wires through. It's a little bit more labor. Rick knows it going in. And it's a little bit more work, but I think obviously it's well worth it.
And just to clarify, that only is where we're penetrating the zip on the outside. So right here, Rick drilled a hole through that top plate, that double top plate, and you can see he's got 2 wires going through there. I'm not yelling at him about that because I don't care.
Because that's in the envelope.
That's in the envelope.
Got it. Okay,
right?
Cool.
I'm gonna insulate these walls, but the outer zip face, that green face on the other side here, is my true air barrier. So if I'm not penetrating that, I don't care. He could have drilled a 4-inch hole in there and put 7 wires through it. I wouldn't have cared. Cool. I'm not air sealing that. I'm not doing anything there.
Even more reason to have the right team. So let's go check out. Can we see some more stuff? Maybe upstairs?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Let's go upstairs. We'll meet you up there.
Cool.
Gentlemen, let's start over in this kid's bedroom over here, because I've got my friends at Benchmark Cabinets measuring over there for me. We'll be talking about them in a future episode. But I think one thing that is worth mentioning is we always start with big pipes and then small pipes on our jobs. Old school builder term. We always want to get the HVAC guys and the plumbers in first, because it's much harder for them to figure out where they're going to put a toilet flange, right? There's not a lot of flexibility in that. But Rick's got some ability to move wires in different spots. So I typically like the plumbers and electricians to start at the same time and coordinate, make sure there's no conflicts. Oftentimes the plumbers will have a big down pipe that can only go in one spot. Maybe the HVAC guy has a little bit of room. So we want them to start, but then Rick, when he starts, he's got to make sure that everything's in line. So this is a great example right here. I've got supply and return upstairs right here. I've got 2 can lights that are on the same exact line. And Rick, those were per the plans, but your cans also need to look good in the room, right? Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
But we try to keep everything in line, keep everything symmetrical, just for looks, for aesthetics.
Yeah, and are you guys typically using lasers, or do you prefer a string line when you're doing that?
In a room this size, we would just use tape measures, but we do use lasers in the longer hallways and bigger rooms.
And I've seen when you have really long runs, you guys will actually just nail up a string line.
We do.
And just let that string stay there because you're not worried about the battery power dying on your laser.
No, I noticed that right away when I walked into. Everything is perfectly symmetrical. Everything is lined up.
That's right.
I've been on a lot of jobs where you're like, this is not lining up with that. And it drives me nuts. It's got to drive,
Yes.
Yeah, typically Rick and his crew are the most detailed on things because they're the ones who over the years are gigged like, hey, that can looks like it's a little off by an inch, right? And some homeowner has that eagle eye.
Yeah.
So these guys over the years have learned to be just real precise on placement. So much so that I noticed downstairs Rick or Sean actually moved one of the rear ducts over to be in line with their cans because it was off a little.
Speaking of alignment, I noticed we got some wall-mounted boxes up here. What are we doing here?
They're smoke detectors.
Okay, smoke detectors. You mounted them on the wall, which is code. Any reason specifically you went wall mounted?
Well, out in the other room when I started laying everything out, Matt normally likes smokes up on the ceilings, but I couldn't get them symmetrical out in the room.
So there it is.
So
There you go.
we went to the wall.
Because of framing. Yeah, that would drive me nuts too. A smoke detector not lined up with it. So we got them mounted on the wall. They're out of sight, out of mind. You don't even really see them. That's pretty awesome.
While we're thinking about that, by the way, here's something that's a little bit different. Have you seen this before, CJ? This is some purple wire.
Just started popping it up. I haven't bought any. We don't got any in our shop. But I did do a little research, and it's actually not a code, but they're actually, the manufacturers are starting to do it to ID. What do we got going on?
The purple wire now is a 12.3 Romex.
See?
Where the yellow is 12.2.
And it always was yellow before. So that's making life a lot easier, right? Nothing's worse than...
So for the dumb non-electrician, you say this is a 12.2, but I'm seeing 3 wires in there. Why do they call it a 12.2?
So you have your ground, your neutral, and 1 hot conductor. And in 12.3.
So they don't count the ground, in other words. That's why they're saying it's a 2-wire rather than a 3.
Correct.
Okay, so the same with this. There's actually 4 in here, but we don't count the ground.
You have 2 conductor. So
Got
it's
it.
the 12.3.
That's confusing for the non-electrician.
Yeah. But again, I like this. This is great, right? It's always been yellow. A long time ago, everything was just white. So I don't mind that at all. I think it's going to eliminate errors. I think it's going to make ID, when you pick something up at the supply house and accidentally, how many times have you done it? Grab 2 rolls of 12.2 when you thought you grabbed one of 3. You get to the job and you're like, oh, I was working a little fast. So I like that. It's going to eliminate a lot of errors. I like the color coding. I did notice a couple other things because I've already walked the whole job.
Okay.
We don't have any exhaust fans in this bathroom. Is there any specific reason why?
Yeah, that's right, CJ. So normally a bathroom is going to have an exhaust by code out of the bathroom. And what you're seeing up here is I don't have any exhaust fans. So what's happening is that duct right there, that little small guy in the corner, is an exhaust that goes to my ERV. So I've got a Life Breath ERV mounted in the attic, and it's pulling the returns, basically it's a balanced system, out of both of these bathrooms upstairs. So we're sucking out all the time. It's gonna run at about 50 CFM, 45 CFM.
All the time.
All the time, which means that these 2 baths are gonna constantly be sucking 25-ish CFM out of the bath 24/7. So then what Rick has to do is then give me a booster, which is not high volt, right, Rick?
It is not.
So what are you running for control, right? I mean, normally an exhaust fan would be a toggle switch or a humidity sensor, on, off, 120 volts. Is this any different?
Yes. So for the control wire, we run 16.2.
Okay.
And it goes onto a momentary switch.
Okay, so when someone walks in there and they're going to take a shower and there's going to be more steam, then they just hit the momentary switch, and what does it do at that point?
It boosts the ERV up to 100%.
Oh, okay.
For a certain amount of time.
See, I like that. That's pretty cool. So you still have full control over it.
I think that one that's in the attic's like 150, let's say, is the full boost. So then it would be 75 out of each bathroom. I would tell you anecdotally though, I have a Zender ERV, which is a Life Breath sister company.
Okay.
And my kids, I suspect, never boost. And in fact, frankly, I forget to do it most of the time too. And believe it or not, I never feel like it's humid up there. Smells go away quickly. You know, people gig me on the comments all the time about, oh, sorry to be crude, you'll smell your fart for a week in that house. It's totally not true, because 25 CFM, 24 hours a day is getting sucked out of this bathroom. So this tub's about to get installed. This tub that goes out here and the wet walls, they dry really quick in here. And the other thing we do that's a little helpful in this particular space is this duct right here is actually a dehumidifier output. It's the supply on the dehum. So I pull a return on the dehumidifier out of the hallway space and I supply into these two kids' baths. So I've got exhaust air for the humidity and I've got supply air, which is the dehumidifier output, which is a little bit hot and very low humidity. As a result, I did the same thing in my two kids' baths upstairs. Rick did all that work over there and they dry like that. The towels dry really quickly. I've never had any smells up there, and I almost never use the booster, even when I go into the toilet room that also has an exhaust. It's amazing.
So you got perfect air quality. You're bringing air in, you're bringing air out, and you still have the ability to crank it up if you hit that boost. I like that.
So that Life Breath is always pulling out of the baths and is always supplying to the bedrooms.
Wow.
That's where you spend the most of your hours in the house on balance, is your 7 or 8 hours in that bed. So we want to supply fresh, filtered air all night long into that bedroom.
Yeah, so that's completely opposite of a traditional exhaust fan, right?
Which back to the electrical though, this puts more load, pun intended, on Rick, right? Because he's got to then wire that ERV upstairs. That's just a plug though, right? For those ERVs?
Yes.
So they just plug into a 110 circuit.
Yes, sir.
Do they have to have a dedicated circuit though?
15 amp. Yes,
Okay, so they do have a dedicated. So now we've got a bunch more breakers, right? I have 2 small ERVs in this house. So now that's Rick's putting 2 more dedicated, 15 amp.
Pretty efficient though. I mean, that's a 120 volt circuit at, a few amps probably. It's not too bad.
It's probably pulling 1 amp most of the time.
See, that's pretty cool. So super energy efficient still, good air quality. I like that.
Yeah, but then lastly, he's also got to pull that low volt wire for me too. And in fact, we're doing something a little different on this house. We're going to use some Sonos equipment in here, which I did at my house and love. And so Rick's going to run the Sonos for us as well, which is basically just a low volt wire to where speakers are going to go. And then he'll have to put some high volt where the Sonos amps are going to go. And speaking of which, there's some kind of cool stuff happening down there. Why don't we show those guys what we're doing for electrical down in that mechanical closet?
Sure.
All right, we'll meet you guys downstairs.
All right, we're gonna head to the mechanical room.
Yep.
One of my favorite places, but I noticed this, kind of like a coat closet, because you already showed me where the mechanical room is, but I see an opening.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is this has been furred down. And if you walk in that mechanical room, why don't you take your little POV camera so people can see what you see?
I want to this is kind of a cool detail. I think I know what's going on, but you got to explain this, Matt.
So CJ, see how this space where my hands are right here is connected to the air in there?
Got it.
And then look on that ceiling. See how you've got one vent that's painted black?
I was going to ask about this because that was one of my questions.
So what that vent is, that's a dehumidifier output.
Oh, okay.
So that's making that room hot. And then we mentioned Sonos a second ago. The Sonos equipment's going to be on this shelf above the coat closet.
Okay, so you're going to have your amps and everything right here, and you're going to be able to access it from either end.
Yeah, so those Sonos amps, they get pretty hot. They get relatively hot. They're not cool to the touch, let's put it that way. I don't know how many watts they draw normally. Probably, 150 watts, Rick, or something?
Yeah, somewhere around
200 watts. We got 6 of them. That's making some heat. That's going to be on that shelf. And then the first vent you saw, CJ, is the dehumidifier output. And then you can see this little R2D2 looking device here. This is my LG heat pump water heater. We decided actually to go with a bigger model. This is the 50 that we were just double checking size and dimension. We're gonna put the 80 gallon in, but that's gonna slide in right where you are, right there. And the deal on this is it's gonna take the heat out of the air and dump it into the tank. So that room is actually gonna be cold because the output on that is cold air. So here's what we've done. I did a couple things here. I tried to put all my hot appliances in there, the Sonos amps. So Rick's gonna wire for those Sonos amps up there. We're also going to put our internet into there as well, so I'll have a router in that space as well. Those devices all make a little bit of heat. The dehumidifier output is also a little bit hot. There's a louvered door that will go into that space. And then lastly, that vent that you saw in there is just a vent to make a loop. So this exhaust fan you're seeing here in the bathroom, or pardon me, in the laundry room above your head there, CJ, that exhaust fan is literally just exhausting to this closet, because I'm going to use a heat pump dryer in here as well that doesn't have an exhaust. So I don't need to penetrate the envelope for an exhaust. That'll be a heat pump dryer, and that way that fan right there can help circulate that cool air out of this space and make sure if this laundry room's a little bit hot, that it's actually pushing the hot air back into the closet, that then can get a virtuous cycle with this heat pump right there.
I can't get you on anything. I literally walked in there and I go, he doesn't have an exhaust fan with Sonos amps and equipment going, producing heat, but it's all figured out.
Yeah, so we thought about it.
Okay, cool.
And it'll have a louvered door, which is not the best for aesthetics, I realize. But you know what? This heat pump water heater, extremely efficient, and we're in a hot climate. So, you know, if I was somewhere else, maybe I would have put that in my basement or my garage. Actually, a lot of people in Texas put it in their garage too. It helps temper the garage heat. But I've already got that carrier system out in the garage, and that is going to keep my garage temperate. We'll probably set it at 80 degrees. So this heat pump water heater living in the house also gives me the ability to have a quicker hot water run to all my locations. This is pretty central in the house, so it's not many piped feet to all of my outlets that I'm going to need hot water.
I love it.
So I know this is the electrical episode, but we're still talking.
But it matters, you know, because that's a big deal. You know, when we're in a closet like this and we're installing equipment and we have no ventilation,
yeah,
that's no good. I mean,
that's right.
Heat kills equipment.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Cool.
Let's switch gears, and I want to show you a couple things that Rick does on all our houses that are a little bit different over in the primary bedroom, master bedroom. So I'll meet you over there.
All right, guys, I actually wanted to check a couple things out in the primary bedroom, but look at this. You guys are doing temp power the right way, huh?
You guys aren't doing this?
No, I mean, on some jobs, right? There's a lot of guys that don't want to, I guess, pay for it. But Rick, did you set this thing up?
I did, yes.
So what do we got going on?
So it's a 50 amp circuit that runs inside, so all the trades have power right inside the house, instead of running extension cords all the way out to the...
That's better. But we don't have a permanent service on here. What's powering this thing?
So I build the T-pole for the jobs.
Okay.
100 amp service.
So temporary power pole, you guys got it established probably before foundation, I'm assuming.
As early as we can. We actually had to run on generator power for about a month on this job because the energy company hadn't energized our pole for a while.
Any like thought going into where the temporary power is located?
So typically we're putting it where, in this case, we took down an old house, so we had to put it where the old service was, and that was part of the problem, is we moved the service location from one pole to another. And so we've had to do some, we'll say the politically correct term of, we had to do some consulting with the city on that. And so it took us a little while. So we ran on generator for a while. I was glad to turn that Champion off, although I was glad to have it. And then once we got that pole energized, then Rick runs this big SO cable inside. I think it was Tim or Nathan's idea to put the quick flash on the outside so that when you feed that SO cable in, it's still relatively airtight.
Yep. And
one cool thing about these Southwire boxes, I don't know these guys, but this box in particular allows you to plug in another SO cable right here and then run a second spider box to the upstairs.
This is pretty central though, so I mean you can pretty much reach everything here.
As a side note, for my builder audience, my company we actually have a second company that's a construction equipment rental company that owns the spider box, the SO cable, the outside temporary air conditioner, and we rent those to our jobs. We rent it to our clients at a below market rate, but that allows me to have really good equipment on the job and control it and make sure it's really good. I learned my lesson the hard way. I had a temporary AC in a house that was a smaller one in the house, and it leaked onto some hardwood floors because it hadn't been maintained well from the rental company. And that's when we were like, that's it. We got to own this equipment and put our own stuff.
That's good. I mean, I can't tell you how many jobs I've been on where we try to hang on to the existing service and then do the flip-flop later. I just think it's genius at the beginning of the job. Establish the temp power pole, get temp power on, and then it's just the guys can rock and roll and build and not have to worry about power.
For sure. And then another quick side note, I don't know if this was you, Rick, that turned us on to these, but these are these LED lights on just a cheap extension cord. And check out how much light you get out of these things. I mean, it's
Oh, yeah.
pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is what the house would look like. It's not bad. By the way, I do have the film on my Pella window, so it's not as bright as it will be. But having these on a job site where you're working and you're trying to see in the shadows makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And this is a cheap fix. And having that spider box inside also means I'm not running a bunch of cables across my finished, beautiful wood windowsills too, right?
Yeah.
I can just run one in and then everyone can feed from here.
I love that.
So this is not the final electric for the house, but it's certainly a good tip for the builders out there when it comes to electrical.
It is.
Cool. Done.
Let's walk into the primary bedroom, and I want to point a couple things out that are Rick Power specials that he kind of does automatically for me. We don't even have to hardly talk about it anymore. This is where the master bed's going to go, right? So you got a big bed, big king in here probably. And what's on either side of your bed? You've got 2 nightstands. And when you're plugging in stuff in your nightstands, how frustrating is it if you only have one outlet in the center by the bed and you got 2 crappy, you know, Kmart, and what am I trying to say? Plug strips plugged in back there. They're frustrating as heck. On the other hand, at my house that Rick also wired, I've got 2 duplex, am I saying that right? Duplex outlets?
Double duplex. Yep.
Double duplex on either side of the bed. So then your phone charger, your nightstand, your lamp, everything has its own plug. It's managed well.
I noticed it right away when I walked in. We got single gang boxes and 2 gang boxes. But also when we were talking earlier about the plans, code minimum, right? I mean, I don't have a tape measure, but it's close. This wall is probably close to 12 feet. So code says you could just, I mean, a lazy architect or a budget build might not want to pay per more locations. You probably get away if this is under 12 feet or under with one dead center. And again, the bed buries it.
That's right.
I like that. That's just a lot.
But even on a budget job, I think it's really smart to be thinking about what's the things I want to spend a couple bucks extra on.
Right. Yes.
And I'm not going to pin Rick down on camera to say how much it costs for those. But, you know, what are we talking? $50, $25, I don't know what it is, to add a double on both sides compared to maybe a single that code would require. And that's one of those things that for the lifetime of the house, that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
Something to think about too is we didn't do it on this house, but at my house, I have a specific plug for my steamer that Rick put in. We thought about it ahead of time. Rick put it in the right spot, and I have one of those little $25 handheld steamers that I steam all these shirts with, my poncho shirts, and I got it in the right spot, and Rick and I thought about it ahead of time. The other thing we didn't do here that we thought about...
That too? I mean, don't breeze over. The steamer draws a lot of juice.
Well, what we did here is we did a more basic layout. We do have 2 outlets in that space.
Yes.
And actually, let's walk back there while we're talking about it. I hope you don't mind. We're going to move a little bit.
I think that's important too.
So code probably could have gotten away with 1 plug back here in this closet, right, Rick?
Yes.
We put 2 in, 1 on either side. Our architect, Chelsea, has a layout for what this is going to look like. We don't have a homeowner here yet. They might end up upgrading to a California closets like I did at my house. But what you're seeing here is it would be pretty easy for us to add an outlet above. Anywhere, right? If I've got a wire in this wall right here, Rick could cut one in and add a box in either location. Now, the other thing that's important to think about, though, is anytime you're finishing your trades, and we haven't done it quite yet, we want to really document where everything is and make sure. And at my house, I know at least one, what was it? I think it was a low volt wire for a TV that I missed or didn't have it right or it was cut. And I went back to my documentation and I actually have a specific service that I used on my house. I was able to open up a photo of this wall and go, all right, there's that fiber optic cable to my TV. Oh, I bet the problem's right there. So 1 drywall cut rather than multiple cuts to get it. And in this room in particular, we could easily go back and go, all right, that's where the feed wire comes for that plug right there. So if we needed to add an outlet right here or up here or down here, that would be pretty easy because you can see the feeds coming here. It's then going down to this outlet. I'm not an electrician. Hopefully I'm not talking out of turn here, Rick. But this place in particular would be a stud bay. They'd be really easy for us to tap into that same circuit. Add another plug, boom, right here, and there's your steamer in the future.
It's nice too, like you said. I think a job gets rolling so fast sometimes they close the walls up and you don't have documentation, I think that's awesome. That,
Yeah.
you know, it takes a few minutes, but I think it's well worth it.
That's right, for sure. Now, we still have more to go on this project on the electrical. Rick's got a couple more things to finish up, including, I want to point out, here's a wire that's hanging out that doesn't have an outlet on it. There's a reason behind this, because we still need to figure out one detail that I'm very specific about, and that's my exterior outlets. So let's come back here in another day or two. Let's let Rick, Sean, his crew get this thing finished up, and let's come back here and we're gonna wrap up this episode. Okay, y'all, it's been about a week since Rick and CJ left. Rick's got a ton done on this house, but frankly, we still have just a couple more things to punch out before my inspection. Today is Tuesday, so we got 2 more days till my rough-in inspection. Got a few things to look at here that I thought I'd point out real quick. Something that we use that's interesting that you may not know about. Allied Molding Products makes an outlet that's adjustable after the fact. See this little screw right here on this box? If we adjust with a screwdriver, this box will actually move in and out, which can be extremely helpful when you're not sure what the tile selection is going to be, like we are on this outlet on a backsplash area. So we use those in a couple places in the house where we're not certain about total depth. The other thing that I want to mention is we touched upon it briefly on this video, but we've got Google Fiber coming into this neighborhood now. I made a whole separate video. Actually, let's walk back there while I'm thinking about it. I made a whole separate video on how we ran the Google Fiber from the outside demarc into the house. But one thing we did additionally that I wouldn't mind pointing out again is we ran another conduit to the outside. So this 2-inch pipe, which is PVC for the reason of I wanted it to be able to be capped from an air sealing and bug sealing perspective, both outside and in. This is just, I labeled it even with my little label maker, empty conduit for future low volt, meaning, hey, if this wire ever had a problem, what you're seeing here is the yellow down here is fiber and the white is just standard coax. If that yellow wire ever had a problem and we needed to replace it, now I've got an empty conduit, which is running from the outside where the demarc is all the way up to the attic. So if you just follow this pipe, we tried to do as few bends as possible. It has a street 90 there, and it has a street 90 here, and that's it. So it should be fairly easy for fish tape to make it into that space. And now we've got easy Google Fiber access. We also did that, frankly, though, because I've got Google Fiber here temporarily. You met Lee earlier in the video from Voltec. He helped me get set up so that temporarily I've got Google Fiber on the job, which means that now when I've got Build Show Live here at this house in a couple months, I've got 600 builders running around the house. Everyone's going to have great internet because cell coverage right here in this part of the neighborhood is absolutely awful no matter the carrier. With that being said, one last thing I want to mention as we're talking about internet and temporary internet, let's go to the front of the job, and I want to talk to you quickly about job site security and how that plays into this electrical. So I'll meet you out front of the house. Speaking of power, that temporary power pole that we've got in the back of the house, besides that spider box, I think we mentioned this earlier, is also running my 5-ton air conditioner. Boy, that has been nice on these 100-degree days, making sure that the house stays nice and comfortable for my trades. Let me mention a couple things on the outset, though. You know, job site security is a really big deal for us in general because we tend to build in town a lot. And that's not entirely true. We build probably half in town, half in the countryside. And something we set up real early that's been super helpful has been this. If you're not familiar, this is a Vosker brand. These are the same guys that make spy point cameras, so I've used them for years on our deer hunting lease to check out what's happening out at the lease. But these cameras are super cool because all in one box, you've got a built-in solar cell, a built-in cellular card, and now I can get, from the moment I set up the job, without needing any power, I can get security cam. Now you do want to charge this before you put it up the first time, but then the solar cell will keep it topped off. And the Vosker app on my phone has been terrific. Alerts, letting me know what's happening. I've taken a couple of pictures and gone back and looked at events a couple of times because I was trying to figure out, did that guy show up? So this has been terrific. But the other thing we do a lot during construction is a competitor of theirs called Ring. You probably know them from their doorbells. But one thing I really like about Ring is that they make a floodlight motion sensor camera combo. And that's what you've got here on this pole. Now, we mounted 2 poles at the start of the job. You're noticing a bunch of black cameras in the front. Those are basically GoPros that we're using to time lapse the job. So disregard those. You may not want those on your job site. But the 2 rings on the top, those are fabulous too, because I can see who's parked in front of the job. Let me pull up my Ring app while we're talking. I can see who's parked out here, who showed up. Like the other day, I was thinking, oh gosh, I wonder if those guys are coming to the job at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. And before I left the house, I just checked, oh, are they parked there? They're parked? Yeah, I should go meet them at the job site. And then of course at nighttime, those motion sensors are really nice. Now the one at the street, I suppose it could be annoying because it's facing towards the street and it lights up when people are walking their dog. But the one facing towards the house, I think has provided a ton of security because anybody walking up to the house realizes, hey, these motion sensors are working and I'm being recorded, which is super, super nice. With that being said, guys, hopefully you got a good overview of what we did here for electrical at the Reisinger build. Huge thanks to our friends at Builders First Source. As we mentioned in earlier videos, we modeled everything when it came to mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and being able to understand where everything went in the house ahead of time with our modeling, total game changer for us as a builder. Now, of course, electrical is the smallest wire. We want our big pipes first and down to our smaller wires, but still figuring out where's my sub panel go, where's my main panel go. Thinking about that before we started the job made a huge difference in really making this job go extremely smooth. So I'll let you know in the comments whether we passed my inspections first time. With that being said, guys, I really appreciate you following along the series of the Reisinger build. If you're new here and you haven't seen it, catch up on the previous episodes. We've been building this house start to finish and capturing the entire process so you can see what's happening here. With that being said, guys, follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Reisinger build.